All right, welcome. Today we've got a real battle of the titans, a great power showdown. We are diving deep into a really fascinating analysis from the U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory to figure out what actually keeps us all connected when the lights go out.
So, picture this. A huge storm rolls in. The grid goes down, your whole neighborhood is dark. But somehow, you pull out your phone and you've still got a signal. I mean, it kind of feels like magic, right? But nope, it's not magic, it's technology. And the unsung hero of this whole story is this thing right here, the humble cell tower. See, to keep our world online, every single one of these towers needs a rock-solid source of backup power. But what's the best way to do that? Well, that's where our competition really begins.
We've got three key technologies stepping into the ring, each one fighting to be the champion of backup power. So let's meet our contenders.
First up, you've got the battery system. Think of this one like a sprinter. It's super fast, kicks in instantly, totally silent, but it's got one big weakness: stamina. The longer you need it to run, the bigger and way more expensive it gets. Fast.
In the other corner, we have the reigning champ, the diesel generator. This is the old-school go-to choice. It's an absolute workhorse that can run for days, and it's got a low upfront cost. The downside? It's loud, it's got emissions, and boy, does it need a lot of maintenance.
And finally, we have the modern challenger, the fuel cell. This is the new high-tech contender. It quietly turns hydrogen into electricity, has super low emissions, and it can run for a very long time, just like a diesel generator.
So to figure out who really comes out on top, this wasn't just some theory on a whiteboard. No, the US government actually co-funded a massive, real-world field test to get some hard data.
And when I say massive, I mean it. They didn't just deploy a handful of these things. They deployed this many new backup power units.
That's right, 852 brand new fuel cell backup power units were installed all over the country. And all that performance data got sent to the pros at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, for a full analysis. This gives us an incredible real-world data set to work with.
Okay, now for the main event, the ultimate cost showdown. And NREL didn't just look at the sticker price. No, they calculated the total annualized cost of ownership. We're talking the whole shebang: purchase, installation, fuel, maintenance, everything over the system's life.
And they crunched the numbers for 4 different situations based on how many hours a year the backup power would need to run, from a short 8-hour outage all the way up to a week-long marathon. Let's break it down round by round.
Round 1, a short 8-hour outage. Now, you'd probably expect the cheap upfront diesel to win this sprint, but get this. With some federal incentives, the fuel cell actually comes in as the lowest cost option, just barely squeaking past the diesel generator.
All right, round 2, a 72-hour, 3-day outage. This is a much more serious scenario, like after a major storm. And look at this. The fuel cell, with incentives, is almost identical in cost to the diesel. It's officially cost competitive in a really critical real-world test. But what about the long haul? In round 3, a grueling week-long outage, the diesel generator finally pulls ahead. And the reason is pretty simple, actually. Storing enough diesel fuel for a week is relatively cheap, but storing that much hydrogen, that requires a much bigger, more expensive tank, and that drives up the fuel cell's initial cost.
So this brings up a really good question. We're seeing the final numbers, but what's actually going on behind the scenes that's making these costs so different?
Well, it all comes down to this really important trade-off. See, the diesel generator has a lower upfront cost, which looks great on paper, but its annual maintenance is about $800. The fuel cell is the total opposite. Costs more to buy, but its maintenance is just a tiny $100 a year. It's a classic tortoise and the hare situation.
But as the NREL report points out, this showdown isn't just about the bottom line. And here's where the story gets really interesting. The final decision often comes down to stuff that doesn't even have a price tag.
This is where fuel cells really start to pull ahead. They're quiet and they have low emissions, which is a huge deal if you're in a city or a residential area. Getting them permitted can be easier, and that maintenance difference, it's massive. A diesel generator might need up to 12 service visits a year. A fuel cell? Just 1.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The NRL report itself says that while that initial cost is a key driver, all these other things, the noise, the permitting, the emissions, are critical factors for anyone trying to make this choice.
So, after all the rounds, after looking at the costs and all the other factors, where does that leave us? Who actually wins this great power showdown?
Let's just look at the final scorecard. For a standard 72-hour outage, both diesel and fuel cells get an excellent on cost. They both have excellent runtimes, which is where batteries just can't compete. But when you look at maintenance, noise, and emissions, the fuel cell is the clear winner.
So, the final verdict is, there isn't one single undisputed champion. The big takeaway from NRL's huge study is that the best choice really just depends on the specific job. If you need power for a super long time in a remote area, diesel's low upfront cost is tough to beat. But for shorter outages or in any place where noise and air quality matter, the fuel cell is an incredibly strong and often cheaper competitor.
And that leaves us with one last question. You know, this analysis was done a few years back. Since then, fuel cell costs have kept on falling, and green incentives are only growing. So the real question, the one I have for you, is who do you think is going to win the next round in this battle for backup power?